economy, and society as a whole. Nigeria, like many countries, faces numerous environmental challenges, ranging from deforestation and pollution to climate change-induced events. This challenge not only threatens our natural ecosystem, but also jeopardize the health and well-being of our citizens. However, among these challenges rise an opportunity for transformation change can serve as a powerful tool to incentivize sustainable practices, while desensitizing environmentally harmful activities. By strategically aligning tax incentives with environmental-friendly initiatives, such as renewable energy investment, waste reduction, and conservation efforts, we can steer businesses and individuals toward more sustainable practices. Furthermore, imposing taxes on carbon emission, plastic usage, and other pollutants can not only generate revenue, but can also discourage activities that contribute to environmental degradation. Integrating SDG standards into corporate governance practices can drive sustainable business practices and foster accountability. By incorporating environmental consideration into decision-making processes, businesses can mitigate risks associated with climate change and resource depletion, while simultaneously creating long-term value for shareholders and stakeholders. Additionally, adherence to SDG standard enhances transparency and trust, attracting socially responsible investors and fostering sustainable economic growth. Okay? The way to get started is to quit talking and start doing. That quote was about from Walt Disney. Okay, we have key considerations within SCJ framework include companies are expected to comply with tax law. Of course, for now, you don't have carbon tax as regards climate, as regards carbon tax or climate change. So companies are expected to comply with tax law. So we trust, of course, there was one carbon tax law that was proposed in the first quarter last year, but it was somehow suspended. And regulation in jurisdiction where they operate. These include accurate reporting income, paying taxes owed, and adhering to relevant tax law and regulations. Companies are expected to disclose their tax practices and strategy, including their approach to tax planning. Stakeholder, this transparency further trust and accountability. SCG consideration include assessing the impact of company tax practices on community itself. This may involve analyzing whether the company tax contributions support social welfare program, infrastructure development, and other community initiatives. Okay, how can students leverage on tax policies and SCG standard for environmental sustainability in Nigeria? So students in Nigeria have a great opportunity to leverage tax policies and SCG standards to promote environmental sustainability. Here are some ways they can achieve this. Students can research on how to implement green taxes in Nigeria, such as pollution levels or taxes break for renewable energy. Of course, thanks to the Federal Inland Revenue, any renewable energy are being exempted from VAT. So it's an employable effect or contribution, which is to encourage renewable energy use. And analyze their effective and identify areas where new tax policy will incentivize sustainable practice. advocate for these policies by writing articles, creating presentation, and engaging with local environmental groups. So, of course, thanks to the OAU Task Club, they are doing fantastic in this area. So many Nigerians may not be aware of tax benefits associated with eco-friendly practices. Students can create educational campaigns to involve businesses and individuals about tax incentive for using clean technologies or implementing pollution controls measures. This will involve workshop, social media campaign, or collaborating with tax agencies. So, how can government also leverage on tax policy and SCJ standard for environmental stability in Nigeria? Of course, I believe for now it's not a good time to bring a new tax because of our economy right now. But however, government can still implement maybe carbon tax just to discourage, carbon emission on environmentally harmful activities like pollution, carbon emission, waste generation, or resources attraction, fossil fuel. This to discourage such practice and generate revenue for investment in clean technologies and environmental resolution projects. Offer tax break for businesses that invest in renewable energy. Adopt pollution controls measures or demonstrate to sustain practices. This incentivizes a shift toward a greener economy. Implement tax policy and structure to ensure polluters pay their fair share for environmental damage. I believe there is one Shell CEO that is the circularization, which the way they have been destroying Niger data. So they should pay for their damages. So this will involve eliminating subsidy for fossil fuel or implementing pollution taxes based on the severities of the impacts. Okay. So trying to reduce the presentation, the speech. So how can students leverage on tax policy and incentive standard for environmental sustainability in Nigeria? As spoke on this, public awareness and action. Environmental issues are complex and public awareness is crucial. Students can organize events, competition, campaigns to raise awareness about environmental challenges in Nigeria. So, of course, this is what OAU, we should give them a kudos, what they are doing. So, in conclusion, leveraging tax policy and SCJ standard present a unique opportunity for Nigeria to chart a path toward environmental sustainability by harnessing the power of regulation, incentives, and accountability. We can catalyze a green revolution that not only protects our planet, but also promotes economic prosperity and social well-being. So let us seize this opportunity and work together to build a more sustainable and resilient future for all. It is not the strongest of the species that survive, not the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. This was quoted by Charles Darwin. So thank you and God bless.
A round of applause for our speaker once again. That was Mr. Kendi Adiliba, representing Mr. Abiodun Ariyibe, Managing Partner at SIO Partners. While he was speaking, I was able to pick one or two things again. He mentioned how tax policies can help to generate revenue for the government to fund renewable energy projects and sustainable energy projects, and also discourage the use of dirty energy, as like fossil fuels, whatnot. It's really important that we have tax policies here in Nigeria that can help to incentivize the transition from dirty energy to clean energy, encourage people to discourage people, companies, and other institutions from using dirty energy. So once again, please can we give him a round of applause? I believe that while he was speaking, a number of us may have some questions that we want to direct at him. If you have any questions, now is the time. Can I have any hands? If you have any questions for our speaker, please signify by raising up your hands so we can receive answers to our questions. So I'm going to be going around with our mic. Do I have any questions from the guest for our speaker? Any questions, please? This would help the speaker to know that, okay, all right, I can see one hand over there. Please help to pass the mic to. So what I would like you to do is say your name and also the question that you have for our speaker. Briefly, please. And if you have any other person with a question, to kind of signify their hands so that we can take them down.
Good morning, sir. My name is Precious. Okay, while you were presenting, you said, in order for us to leverage on tax policies concerning climate change, we should invent competitions to get it known to students here. So my question is there anything being done outside the school, like in the industry, that is being known? Because if we students are getting the knowledge, but outside it's not being, knowledge is not being popularized, it's going to be like an, like say a, so like is there any way that the government is, or people outside, that the climate change innovation is being known? If we have knowledge as students, us going outside, we'll be able to meet people that also know this outside. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Like last week, I was in a conference that was organized by Manufacturer Association of Nigeria, and it's about climate change and sustainability. So there are a lot of association groups that are, advertising or campaigning against, climate change. Of course, outside there, not only the task club where you're not only students, but it's a word to say, that you guys are doing fantastic. And other outside there too, there are people who are championing this climate change revolution. I believe that question has been answered. Yeah?
Do we have any other question? Do we have any other question? The understanding of the audience. Aside questions, do you have any comment? There's a question again. Okay, another question. All right.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. You talked about carbon tax, that it came up like it was suspended. So I just want to, is there a possibility or a likelihood of it being implemented anytime soon? Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm not the best position to answer this question. The FRS chairman is here. He can tell us when and when we should be expecting this. So, sir? Okay, I will say, I think he's busy. So I would say it is a thing that, it has to be implemented. It has to be, of course, to control the environment, to ensure that everyone is transiting to greener energy. So there's a need for it because, the way it is now, you could remember 2021 or 2022 or so, there was climate change, like flood all over Nigeria, if you could remember. It was as a result of this, climate emission and so. So I think there's a need for it to be controlled. And if it's not controlled, so that means everybody is exposed. We are all exposed, so we are all in it. So I believe there's a need to put a caution, a caution and a control. And how to put a caution and a control is by taxing the emitters. we should penalize people that are taxing them. And people who are trying to move into a greener energy, we should reward them. There should be an incentive so that to keep our environmental safe and the people safe. So thank you. I think the chairman is ready to answer the question. When should we be expecting carbon tax? Carbon tax. Okay, sir, the question, okay.
The question he asked, just to reiterate, was when should we be expecting an implementation of the carbon tax as provided?
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you. Standing on the existing protocol, I think I might just want to make a comment here. It is not the function of FRS to implement the provisions of the Climate Change Act. Now we have a council, Nigerian Climate Change Council, Nigerian Council for Climate Change, that is responsible for formulating guidelines and regulations to guide that. Now, because of the recent shuffles in the administration, there has been a law in more or less kickstarting the affairs of that particular council and the other administrators that support them. So just to make it clear, FRS is not their remit to discharge the provisions of that particular act, but the council that has been constituted by the Climate Change Act are the ones responsible for the implementation of all the provisions, including the carbon tax, carbon profiling, and all the other issues around environmental, ensuring that environmental friendly initiatives are implemented. So we're looking at, I think it's still a work in progress because they've constituted the secretariat that I'm aware of, and there are other things that are in place. So hopefully we expect things to start kicking off before the end of the year and then begin to see traction. And secondly is that the presidency is also very interested in the issues around the environmental, protecting our environment. So we have a National Climate Transition Council that's also been constituted to help to drive that. And they have a mandate to at least begin to show working by the third quarter of this year, which is before the end of the third quarter of this year. So we will begin to see things that happen around that conversation very recent coming time. But it is not the remit of the FRS. So I just want to thank you.
All right. So I would actually like to ask a follow-up question. This is a personal question. So you've talked about the implementation of the carbon tax coming very soon. So I want to know, given the Nigerian context, I mean, the price of fuel is at an all-time high right now, and we understand that when a carbon tax is being implemented, we expect to see a further push in the price of PMS. So do you think it's a smart choice to be implementing a carbon tax within the framework, the time frame of 1 to 2 years in Nigeria currently? I just want to have perspective of you and maybe any other panelist or speaker right now.
Thanks. So just to also provide some sort of context, carbon tax is not only on PMS or AGO and the likes of it. Carbon tax in itself, it's usually tax on greenhouse emission products, essentially. So it covers, the only exemption globally are things around coal, lignite. I think there are about 3 of them, coal and lignite, which are specifically used for power generation. The rest are, there's a sort of tax imposed on them. Now, when people talk about transition into clean energy, my comment will always be to look at the circumstances, our peculiar circumstances, before making such a submission. We're still struggling with our current energy consumption, or rather, providing sufficient energy to power and satisfy our current energy demand. So, more or less balancing the greenhouse emission products with cleaner energy sources, so that at the end of the day, whatever greenhouse gas emission that you are putting into the air, you have other renewable energy sources to absorb them or make them cleaner. So that's the net zero or target that most countries are striving to, which Nigeria's going up to 2050. 2050. That's the 2050. That's what our target is. That by 2050, whether that's realistic, it's a conversation for another day. But that's the commitment we have made, and that's the target we are pursuing. So to piggyback to your question, it's not just only whenever you take decisions to use fiscal policy to drive certain behavior among consumers or companies, there's always both a negative and a positive impact. So we can't take only the negative impact without also considering the positive, that will come out of it. Yes, everybody, we want to protect our environment, because there's nothing else we can leave behind for the next generation apart from a very healthy and good environment. So it's very critical, and it's a conversation everybody will need to join in. But at the heart of that is also understanding the peculiarities or the nuances of our environment, and finding ways to ensure that we implement bespoke and localized solutions that's going to address our specific needs, rather than adopting things that may not necessarily help us. So that's just my take on that.
Thank you very much. A round of applause. So I would also still like to ask one personal question, and I would preferably like one of the panelists or speakers from this end to make a comment on it, so that we can have a more broad conversation. So I'm the director of research at the Task Global EU, so I have a bit of understanding of some of all these things. So I understand that there is an African ideology or African position that is of the opinion that Nigeria or Africa as a whole should not be too concerned about climate change, this and that, because as a continent, the statistics say that as a continent, we generate just about 3% of carbon emissions in the world. So people or African leaders are of the opinion that persons in the West, the countries in the West that are contributing mass amount of carbon emissions should be the one advancing the shift, right? So that's an African ideology that I'm aware of, and I would just like a speaker to comment on that. Do you think it's a plausible argument, or do you think that it has loopholes? And do you think Africa should also be engaged in advancing the shift to renewable energy? So do I have somebody on this wing to help to comment on that? Briefly. Sir, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. What I would say will be from my own personal perspective, in as much as Africa is also a part of the global, I would think that it is necessary that Africa also key into this climate change. Another thing to note is that climate change, the momentum for sustainability of climate change is no longer a trend. It's a massive movement, which irrespective of the continent or the country or your region, you are expected to also key into that discussion or that objective. And I think it's a common goal, which is basically to achieve a certain target of a certain target of emission. And at the same time, of course, we also need to look at it from the perspective of, if we achieve that target that we are looking at, it makes life better for every one of us. So as much as a continent, we've not been requested to contribute anything in terms of finances, but basically to key into that objective, which will better the life of all and sundry. I think it's important that we key into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our speaker. So right about now, we would be moving to the first panel session of this event. But before that, I want to also appreciate the comments and the feedback of every speaker that we've received today. And I key into what you've said, sir, because while Mr. Kendi Adidigba was speaking, he mentioned that climate change threats climate change concerns are no longer a threat. They're happening now. So we have them, we can feel them in Nigeria. We have instances of climate-induced flooding. We have rising temperatures. I know that by the time I get to my room, I do not have an AC in my room, but by the time I get to my room, I have to combat with, serious heat. And I believe that a number of us here can also relate to what I'm saying. So climate change challenges, climate change concerns are no longer a threat. We are feeling the effect. So we, as a country, as a continent, must also take steps to advance the shift to cleaner energy. Once again, a round of applause for our speakers. So like I mentioned, we would be moving to panel session 1, and we have panelists from diverse background. It's a very, very seasoned panel list, and I'm personally looking forward to it because I'm looking forward to get the views of each and every one of us, and I'm sure the audience is also looking forward to our panel session. So I'm going to be calling up stage some of our panelists for panel session 1, but before I do that, I want us to get a bit acquainted with some of them. So I'll be doing a brief, very, very brief introduction. Pardon me, speakers, for the course of time, in the interest of time, we will not be able to read the full citation. So I'm going to try to, highlight some of the key achievements and then also the key points. To invite upstage, I would like to call on this person, the panelist, who is a director in the tax division of Mazars in Nigeria, one of the leading accounting firms in Nigeria, and is also a member of professional bodies, including ICANN, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, the Institute of Chartered Economists of Nigeria, and the Nigerian Institute of Management. Panelists, before joining Mazars, served as the head of tax and compliance services at SIAO Partners for over 5 years. He is a first-class graduate in economics from Olabisi Onabanjo University. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, can we welcome Mr. Ajibola Sugunro to the stage? Let's keep it up as he joins us on the stage. Protocol officers, your help is needed, so please kindly escort our panelists to the stage right now. Our next speaker, or panelist, pardon me, is the acting dean of the Faculty of Law at Adeleke University and immediate past deputy director. Is the immediate past deputy director of the Office of Research, Grants and Linkages. He holds a PhD degree from the Faculty of Law, University of Ibadan, where he researched human rights-based approach to climate change mitigation in Nigeria. It would interest you to note that our panelist is heading a research team currently working on developing a carbon-neutral framework for Adeleke University. I would also like to add that he was a Natural Resources and Environments Program Climate Research Fellow with the Premium Times Institute for Investigative Journalism. And through this fellowship, he was able to partner with a team of researchers from West Africa to assess the feasibility of the nationally determined contribution pledges of some selected West African states. Ladies and gentlemen, if your hands are not too busy, let's put them together for Dr. Kingsley Onu, the current acting dean of Adeleke University. You're welcome, sir. We are happy that you are gracing this event with your presence. We hope to have an insightful session with you. Now, right about now, I would like to introduce Mr. Oluwatobiloba Adekoya. He obtained his LLB from Osun State University in 2017, and he is currently an intermediate senior associate in the WTS Blackwood Stone Corporate Commercial and Tax Practice team. He has advised clients spanning across a wide range of sectors, including finance, technology, energy, and infrastructure. He provides tax advisory, transfer pricing, and tax compliance services to multinational companies. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Oluwatobiloba Adekoya. Let's put our hands together for him as he comes up stage. Thank you very much. Our next speaker holds a degree from Obafemi Awolowo University. Can I hear somebody say Great Ife? Great Ife! Thank you very much. And he also has an LLM degree from Columbia Law School. He's a member of professional bodies, including the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, the New York County Lawyers Association, and the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. He has experienced rapid growth as a chartered accountant and tax professional. Very early on in the career, he was at Fort Oil PLC as the Chief Financial Officer, and he also had a stint work experience with Aluko and Eyebode. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Mr. Moshood Olajide, the current Managing Director of Adova Oil. If your hands are not too busy, let's put our hands together for Mr. Moshood Olajide. The media team, do we have our virtual speakers ready for us? Media team, can somebody confirm that we have our virtual speakers ready for us? We have 2 panelists joining us virtually in today's event. Can I get a confirmation that our virtual speakers are here with us? While that is being done, I would like to introduce the 2 virtual speakers. The first one is the founder and executive director of Sustainable Solutions for Green Growth. He's a lead green associate and a World Economic Forum global shaper. He has a wealth of experience working on climate change projects within the Commonwealth, focusing on practical solutions to climate justice issues. Interestingly, our panelist was a delegate at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in 2021 that held at Milan, Italy, Glasgow in the United Kingdom, where he represented Nigeria, working with young leaders from across the world to develop creative and innovative solutions to solve climate crisis through renewable energy and cleaner energy sources. Ladies and gentlemen, this is no other person than Aziz Tobi Abubakar. Can we put our hands together for him? He's going to be joining us virtually. All right. And our last panelist, who is also going to be joining us virtually, is a manager in the accounting and risk advisory services unit of Anderson in Nigeria, where he leads the. He is a graduate from Department of Psychology of Obafemi Awolowo University. Can I have somebody say Great Ife once again? He has experience that cuts across capital market advisory, IFRS financial reporting, sustainability reporting advisory, amongst others. Prior to joining his current firm, Anderson, he worked in PwC, where he headed the ESG reporting team of PwC's accounting advisory line. Our panelist is a chartered accountant, a chartered banker, and also an ACCA diploma holder. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Mr. Kayode Olaide, who will be joining us virtually. Media team, can you confirm that we have our panelists joining us virtually? All right, while that is being done, I would like to invite the moderator for this panel session. The moderator for this panel session, can I get a confirmation that she is currently with us? All right, I'll just do a brief introduction. The moderator for this panel session, all right, Kofoworola Omowale, she is the former president of the Task Club of Obafemi Awolowo University. Former president of the Task Club of University of Ibadan. Well, she's a personal friend to the president and myself, so by association, she's also a student of UAU. A round of applause for her as she joins them upstage, please.
Good afternoon. Hi. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Kofurela, and I'm very excited to be moderating this panel. So, as we all know, that the topic of the panel is really talking. So, majorly, what we're talking about is integrating climate change into tax policies and also administration for environmental sustainability in Nigeria. Okay, so before we start, I want to start with an icebreaker. So I'm going to start from, oh, you're already mic. Okay, so we're going to start from you. So you just tell us your name. And so what do you think about climate change in Nigeria in a sentence? Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tobiloba Adekoya. Climate change in Nigeria in a sentence might be difficult, but I would say because of climate change, everyone needs an air conditioner or fan, because for those of us who live in Lagos, Lagos is now extremely hotter than ever
I can
before.
say the
So,
same in Ibadan.
yes, so cause just that's what climate change has done to all of us, and I think that tax can be a way to get around that.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, same question. Just in a sentence, what do you think about climate change and tax before we go into the questions?
Climate change is.
So
Actually-
please your name so they can remember.
My name is Kingsley Onu from Adeleke University. Okay, climate change is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing now as a nation, and is alarming because change is affecting all of us, and our effort to beat climate change most times also contribute to climate change, because we are working hard, but because many of us do not have adequate information, the things that we think we are doing to run away from climate change end up increasing the risk factors for climate change. So it's a very big problem that we are facing. But I believe that there is a solution, and we will be able to find a way around it as we continue with the discussion.
Yeah, and that's why we're here. Thank you very much, sir.
Ajibola Shogoro is my name, from Mazas in Nigeria. My perspective about what climate change is that climate change is a concern to us as a people, and in terms of our activities, either as a business, as a government, or as an individual, it's a concern in the sense that it is high time we started looking at the impact of our activities, because what we do go a long way in determining or affecting our environment. So as long as what we do affects our environment, it's important that we watch or we are cautious of the impact of what we do. And now looking at it, just like what the first speaker said, that Lagos is hot, sometimes around February, March, you'll be wondering if we're actually in February, March, because the situation or the weather condition in Lagos then was as if we were in December, also it was Harmattan and also very dusty. So that tells us that, of course, climate change has come to stay, and it's something that we have to take very serious. I don't want to say it's a threat, because we have solutions in terms of course, what policies government is putting in place to actually address the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
My name is Moshood Olajide. I work with Adova PLC. Climate change, I think, in addition to everything that's been said, will necessitate energy transition. And so we have to collectively begin to evaluate how we generate and use energy in our society.
I really love the dimension you brought into it, energy, and that's very important, because one of the major sectors that affect climate change all over the world is energy, and that's why we see a lot of international oil companies divesting most of their fossil fuels and assets that would encourage or promote climate change. Yeah. So to our panelists virtually,
Please, Aziz and Kayode, please can you confirm that you can hear us?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can. Okay. So I believe that you've been following the train of conversation. So basically, we're just trying to, get your thoughts around what you think about climate change and tax generally. It's just an icebreaker before we get into the conversation fully. So please, can you share your thoughts on what you think about climate change generally?
Thank you very much. I didn't get your name.
Oh, my name is Kofo.
Hello. There. Thank base Kayode Olaide here with Anderson, Nigeria. And also a greetings to the esteemed panelists. Every apologies that I can't be there with you on vacation at another time. When I got the call, I can't turn down any call from school. All right, so thanks very much for having me. For climate change, this is an discourse we've all gathered today to speak about. It's not a cliche like one of the panelists. Climate change is part of our way of life. What I would say is that climate change relates to every one of us, directly or indirectly. And in terms of tax, what tax would help us to do is to make organizations that make profit from running their businesses and also directly or indirectly. What tax does is just to make organizations and establishments that make off profits from their operations to make them more responsible. I'm sure that when we delve deeper into the discourse, then we would know how making profit from the environment and also giving back to the environment, how it cross lines, tax, and climate change. But just to wrap it up, climate change is part of our way of life, not a cliche. It is something that we are all faced with directly or indirectly. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Kayode. What you mentioned around the fact that climate change is part of our way of life. I think that's the recurring theme that everybody has mentioned here. That, even in the past 2 years, I think we've all heard the word climate change more than ever before because we are seeing the real impact, flood, the heat, and like everything happening all around. So thank you very much for that, Kayode. Aziz, would love to hear from you before we move on. Aziz, please, are you here with us? Okay, I think we'll just, come back to that. So my next question to, okay, my next question is to Kinsley, or can I call you Kinsley if I'm that? Okay, yeah. So we all have a good understanding of how like the tax environment in Nigeria is from the federal level to the state and local government. So how do you think that Nigeria can leverage tax structure, our existing tax structure and administration, to ensure that companies, implement environmentally friendly policies and practices?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, looking at our tax structure system, we have taxes at federal level, we have at the states, and we only have at the local government level. And the tax structure as we have it now has actually been a little bit contentious because we've been seeing back and forth between the federal government and the state government as to who has taxing power over certain issues. We've also seen this thing play out between local government and state government as well, especially when it comes to affluent levies and taxes. So how do we work out incentives? Then it's important that the stakeholders come together, as Nigeria has actually come with this policy on making sure that efforts that are galvanized around eco taxation or green taxes are coordinated by the NCC. And by virtue of the Climate Change Act, Section 467, it has given the NCC power to partner with relevant agencies, because it will be very difficult for us to say state government do this, local government do this. It has to be a synergized effort because we must avoid double taxing. Number two, we must equally avoid overburden, because even though taxes may not be duplicated, but where we have several taxes, it kind of shifts people away, because what we need here is more or less more of incentives. Then if we're talking about incentives, we must have a coordinated arrangement between the various stakeholders in order to agree on the incentives, the percentage of the incentives, and to implement these incentives. And the key question will be, what are actually the incentives? Then, because a lot of people have talked about government providing incentives for green energy, which is important, and I support the idea. Then again, we must also consider the fact that the government as it stands now is actually in a huge debt, and government run on taxes and levies. Then if we must, because it's a big dilemma, we want to incentivize these projects, but at the same time, we also need resources. Because of this, we must have to come to a balance whereby the various stakeholders sit, including the manufacturers and also business owners, to work out what these incentives should be and how it will actually meet the basic needs of Nigeria, because we shouldn't just go around saying they have this incentive in US, they have this incentive in Canada, so we must have them here as well. We must consider the local peculiarities of our country. And again, we must also come to terms with the fact that if we introduce incentives and help businesses grow, that the government will, in the long run, also recoup whatever loss that it may suffer at the interim. So it's about synergy between the various institutions and stakeholders, because it will be difficult for us to say this is what the incentive should be without that synergy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kinsley. That's major thing I can pick up from what you're saying is that collaboration, and we should localize our own policies. You mentioned something around, we should not keep saying, other countries are, incentivizing green taxes and green policies and incentives. Okay. Yeah, so, we have to look into our own policies, our own structure. How can we localize? Because I think that's the mistake we make really in policy making sometimes. We try to compare with other jurisdictions and countries, and those countries are already established, right? So my follow-up question to that would be that, what specific thing or way do you think the FIRS can come in with this?
In terms of the policy?
Yeah, in terms of the policies and collaboration.
Okay, it still boils down to taking it back. They may come up with proposal, and then whatever proposal they have will be taken to the NCC, because FRS is also a member of the council.
Yeah.
So at the council meeting, they can make their proposal known, because it has to be broken down into the various tax structures, actually. But at the same time, it must be done in such a way that we don't have so much burden on the people, because businesses don't mind if you increase taxes, because they will always push those taxes to the consumers. And the consumers are the ones that will actually suffer the loss. And at the end of the day, the government will not achieve the essence of introducing those taxes in the first place, except if government is going to increase taxes on brown energy and then incentivize green energy. If we can work on that, then it will be a fantastic approach.
Okay, brown and thank you. Okay, so you mentioned brown energy and green energy. So for people that don't know what brown energy means, so they are basically just like energy activities that affect climate and environmental sustainability. Then for green energy are activities that are clean and would ensure that we do not constantly get burnt by like climate change and all of that. So you mentioned collaboration, and building on that, I would love to move on to Aziz. Is Aziz with us? Please, can you confirm if... Should we move to the next panelist? Please, can you confirm? Can you confirm? Okay. All right, then, just to save some time, my next question would go to Toby. Yes, please, can you give him the mic? Okay, yeah. So Toby, you had mentioned a couple of things around, collaboration and brown energy, green energy, and all of that. So I understand that you work with, you work in the legal profession. And how do you think laws, so we've been talking about policies really, but how do you think laws can effectively curb climate change?
Well, thank you. Laws are helpful in curbing climate change. So for instance, we already have existing provisions of law. We have the Climate Change Act, for instance, that aims to address climate change. But beyond the existence of laws, beyond promulgating laws, Nigeria has tons of laws, right? But the most important thing is implementation or enforcement. So, for instance, earlier on, one of the panelists had mentioned that we have a Nigerian Council on Climate Change. The law was passed in 2022, I think, 21. And that council hasn't really done much, if we're being honest, in the past 3 years. So, yes, laws are important. It's important for us to, establish provisions of laws, all that. But the most important thing, or, in this whole conversation about climate change is action. We can't just keep writing, speaking about it, but we need to take action. Government needs to implement the existing laws, take necessary steps, to address climate change. So basically, that's my own submission on the role of laws in climate change.
Climate change. So we should look into implementation. We have quite a number of laws already, so we should just look to implement. Thank you very much for that. Back to the virtual panelists. Okay. right, then, just to save time again, my next question would go to Ajibola. So, Chobi had mentioned that we should look into more of implementation and also ensuring that the existing laws that we have are effective. Is that, what are the key challenges in monitoring and enforcing environmental tax regulations in Nigeria? So what challenges do you think we currently face, and what future challenges do you think we would still face?
Okay. Thank you. I will answer the question from two perspectives. Number one, I'm not sure we currently have environmental tax regulations in Nigeria. So if that is the case, of course, we might not have issues around implementation and enforcement. But nevertheless, let me just speak generally as to some of the issues we have around enforcement and monitoring. Now, come to think of it, if you are to enforce or to monitor, the first thing is that there must have been laws in existence. That is one. Yeah. Then two, it's also important that you have adequate data or information about the participants or the operators within the sectors or the environment where you are to enforce. So if you don't have information about them in terms of data, then it might be difficult to do enforcement or monitoring. Now, another one is also capacity. So we are talking of monitoring. If the capacity is not there, if I'm not mistaken, except FRS and maybe a few other agencies that actually have quite a number of locations or offices, I'm not sure we have any other agencies like that. In terms of FRS, we have offices virtually in all nooks and crannies of Nigeria, but most importantly in Lagos. And even at that, the capacity is not there to do monitoring or enforcement. Now, on enforcement, of course, the major challenge around enforcement is the political will. Because if you are going to enforce, we have laws in existence which you are meant to enforce. Now, you could have instances or situations where some of those organizations or operators you are to monitor or to enforce, they are owned by the power that be. So the political will might not be there to actually do one or two things around enforcement. Another thing, like, of course, I already mentioned the capacity. Of course, you need to look at the number of organizations or entities that we have in the country compared to the human capacity to do enforcement. So that is not there. Another one, we've not actually leveraged on technology to have adequate information in terms of data of all these participants within the industry. Another one, we can also look at the framework of the participants. Do we really have information about them? Don't forget, we have those operators within the informal sector. We have those, the large organizations. We also have the small, medium, and what have you. So there's meant to be adequate information or robust database for any agency to carry out implementation or enforcement. Now, the previous speakers, they already spoke about collaboration. Another thing is we need to have an alignment of purpose. We have the existing tax laws, we have the Climate Change Act, but do we really have an alignment of purpose or objective? Of course, we are expecting that we are talking about tax, how we could actually have an environmentally sustainable society driven by tax. Of course, if we are to do that, the representative of the chairman already talked about carbon tax. It has not been implemented. We have an agency for that, which is the National Council on Climate Change. Because I'm not sure they've been able to align this objective or purpose with the FRS to be able to do that. Now, still talking about political will, look at sometimes last year when the fiscal policy measure 2023 was introduced, we have discussion around the green tax on single-use plastic. but it was actually suspended. We also have, of course, import adjustment tax levy on some capacity of vehicles, 2,000 cc engines and 4,000 cc engines. All these are basically, they are steps or strategies put in place to ensure that we have an environment that is, of course, not that is with a reduced emission. We also have an environment that focuses on making life better for everyone. So, summarily, the major challenges around enforcement and implementation is having adequate information about the industry. Of course, in an industry, of course, when we are looking at climate change, we don't necessarily need to focus on the industry that does more of pollution. It's important to know that every one of us, we have one way or the other contributing to this climate change in our respective activities. So the capacity is not there to actually measure or to actually follow up with all these persons. When we also look at the Climate Change Act 2021, the focus was just on MDAs of the federal government. Then we also have private entities. Of course, what of individuals? Where are we? Of course, in our little capacity, we also have things that we do. There are ways where our activities also impact the environment. But that is not part of this discussion, or that is not part of the focus of this act. So I think to have a robust enforcement and monitoring, of course, the regulators need to have the information. The backing must be there. Even when the laws are there, the political will to carry out some of these things are not there. The laws are there, but when it comes to implementation, the political will is not there to do some of these things, a contribution.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So when you were talking, you mentioned something around the 10% tax on single-use plastics. So I understand that the reason why it was suspended alongside the other taxes and other provisions of the fiscal measures policy was because of, the fact that it wasn't in alignment with the 90 days that is stipulated in national issues surrounding it. However, aside from the other issues, do you think it was a good decision to have suspended that tax?
Well, thank you. Just to correct you, I never said 10%. It's actually 5%. So 5% green tax on single-use plastic. In terms of suspension, of course, there are two ways we could look at it. When the administration of PBAT came on board, of course, the ideal thing to do based on professional advice was to suspend. But come to think of it, of course, we are we've actually passed the 90 days of 18. But I think there could be two things around it. One is, of course, the president could actually be looking at the tax burden on taxpayers or the tax burden on the masses. That is one. Then the number two would also be that the government is also looking at, or the president is also looking at the possibility of having a well-defined tax around climate change. So those could be the two major reasons why that particular tax was suspended. And even at that, even when we had the introduction of the tax, we had quite a lot of discussion within the public space around no information as to which agency will be responsible for the administration, no information as to the criteria for applying the tax. We just know it's 5%, but we don't know what the base will be. Of course, no information as to the agency and what have you. Now, of course, don't forget that after the president assumed office, we've had quite a lot of changes around tax. We have the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, and that committee is working assiduously to ensure that our tax system is reformed. And I think I listened to the Minister of Finance some couple of weeks ago when he mentioned around having about 250 tax types. And the administration is working towards just bringing or narrowing down those taxes to just 9. So that could be part of the reasons why the president actually suspended it. And don't also forget when the representative of the, or maybe one of the attendees asked questions around why the carbon tax was suspended. Of course, this might be the reason because we have a committee that is working assiduously to ensure that we now reform all our taxes. And the essence of this is to ensure that our taxes are our tax revenue is properly harmonized. It's properly harmonized. So I know that when we have another agency managing or responsible for a particular tax, of course, don't forget we also have the tax authority, FRS in this case. Of course, we also have the SRS in the case of state. So whenever we have cases around tax that is being part of the purview of another agency, it's important that we find a way to bring it under the purview of the FRS, just as we have in the case of the police trust fund levy, the NITD levy. The FRS or the tax revenue, the tax authority is responsible for the administration. So when it's collected, they now move back to the relevant agency. So back to the question why the government suspended, I'm sure it's because of these tax reforms that I'm sure before the end of 2024, we will definitely get the report of the committee. And well, just to be optimistic, I'm sure that when we get the report in terms of streamlining our taxes to 9, we should have like